ACP countries. And at this point in time, all right, so allow me to welcome the next panel, and I'll start with Her Excellency Ms Chileshe Mpundu Kapwepwe, who's the Secretary General COMESA. Let's put our hands together as she comes on stage, please. All right, I'll move on to the next panelist, Ms Ifeyinwa Ugochukwu, CEO, Tony Elumelu Foundation. Let's put our hands together for her. And do forgive me if I mispronounce your name. Is she in? Ugochukwu, is she in? Oh, thank you. We also have Ms Wanjuhi Njoroge, founder and president of Nelig Group. Let's put our hands together for her. And last but not least, we have Tanya Habimana, who's the CEO for Non-Zero Africa, based in Johannesburg, South Africa. Put our hands together for her. All right, so the discussion and the dialogue that we'd like to have here is on decent jobs and opportunities for youth in ACP countries. And just like we did with the previous panel, we're going to give them an opportunity to give us their opening remarks. I'll kindly request that we keep them as short as possible so that we try and redeem the time. Then we'll also open up the panel or the discussion to for any questions that we may have. So let us start with Ms. Ifeyinwa Ugochukwu, CEO for Tony Elumelu Foundation, to come and just give us your opening remarks. Welcome. Let's put our hands together and welcome her as she comes to give us her opening remarks.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Permit me to stand on all existing protocols. It is an absolute pleasure to be here today, and I did find the previous panel extremely engaging, and it is exciting times on our continent and across the developing world as we begin to prioritize youth and women empowerment. And so it is obvious that the world youth population is literally exploding. We know that in Africa is the only continent on the planet that is getting younger. This means that by 2050, almost 40% of the world's youth will be either African or living in developed countries. And what we are here for today is to ensure that by that time, we're no longer talking about developed countries, but we're talking about world players, equal partners with the rest of the global continents. Our human capital is our greatest wealth, and if we must harness that potential, human capital development must therefore be our priority, because only through economic empowerment and job creation can we ensure that our youth population is the world's greatest opportunity and not the world's greatest catastrophe. We can trace most of the problems in developed nations down to poverty. And so if we tackle this, then we have solved 90% of our problems. 97%, permit me, I love numbers, so you will always hear me talking about statistics and numbers. 97% of the jobs existing today in Japan are created by the small and medium enterprise sector. 97%. This tells you that the only key to economic transformation and economic development is to build a strong and robust SME sector, because they are the ones that will provide the jobs, not the government and not the big organizations. And that is why at the Tony Elumelu Foundation in 2015, we launched a $100 million commitment from our founders' private family wealth to identify, train, mentor, and fund 10,000 African entrepreneurs across all 54 African countries over 10 years. And this was done because we know that if we empower entrepreneurs, if we train them, if we fund them, and create in them a job creating mentality as opposed to a job seeking mentality, then we're halfway there. And so, to date, we have trained and funded just over 9,000 African entrepreneurs, even though we're 5 years into our program, from all 54 African countries. Each year, January 1 to March 1, our application portal opens and entrepreneurs from all African countries apply. The first year, we had just about 20,000 people apply. That was in 2015. Fast forward to 2019, this year alone, we had 300,000 young entrepreneurs across all 54 African countries apply to our program. The foundation selects 1,000 every year. This 1,000, we train them with our proprietary online training program that has been likened to a mini MBA. And then we give them mentoring, because mentoring is critical to ensure that you're learning from someone who has walked the shoes you're trying to walk in. And most importantly, we pair this up with funding. And so everyone that's trained gets a $5,000 non-returnable seed capital. So every year, we pay $5 million direct to the hands of African entrepreneurs. And what we've seen is that these young entrepreneurs have gone on to do amazing things. They've gone on, some of them having started with just an idea, to hiring 300 to 400 people in their businesses, to raising millions of dollars in additional funding. In Kenya alone, we have over 500 entrepreneurs that we have trained and funded. The list goes on. But one thing that is critical to the job, to creating decent jobs for the youth in the coming years, is that we cannot afford to miss the fourth industrial revolution. We missed the first three, at least some African countries missed the first three. We absolutely cannot afford to miss the fourth industrial revolution, and that is the digital revolution. And that is why, even though our program is sector agnostic, we insist that all entrepreneurs leverage technology in one form or another in their businesses, because this is what will leapfrog the entrepreneurs into the 21st century and ensure that they have an equal playing field with all other entrepreneurs everywhere in the world. And so training is critical, funding is critical, mentoring is critical, and all this is possible because we, as a foundation, are leveraging technology. Our application system is online, our training portal online as well, and that is the only reason why we can scale and reach the hundreds of thousands that we reach on an annual basis. Recently, we have a partnership with UNDP, and UNDP joined hands with us to train and empower 100,000 young entrepreneurs in the Sahel regions of Africa over the next 10 years. But what is particular about the Sahel region is that they are mostly in the rural areas, and some of them do not have internet connectivity. So whilst we're offering offline trainings to the entrepreneurs in these regions, we have said to the governments, we will not have a hope to achieve the job creation we want to achieve on the continent if Africa is not connected. We need to ensure that the infrastructure is in place so that everyone has access to internet. Everyone has access to the global markets and the global village that internet connectivity offers. And so, just to end, because I'm mindful of the time that we have, the young African entrepreneur has stated that Africa is rising. And Africa is rising not just on the African continent, but globally. Young Africans everywhere face enormous challenges in access to training, access to markets, access to funding. It is only through collaboration, working hand in hand with governments, with the development organizations, with the ACP, that we can really offer the youth the jobs and the empowerment that they need to take their place on the world stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I deeply apologize that I missed out on one panelist, and I'm going to call upon her to come. And why don't you give a hearty welcome to Her Excellency Ms Rosmary Mbabazi, Minister of Youth and Culture, Republic of Rwanda. And as she is coming, I'll kindly request that we just limit our opening remarks to 3 minutes because we're really behind schedule. Welcome, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I think it was by design so that I can speak after Tony Elumelu Foundation, which is a great partner in Rwanda. The Secretary General of ACP, Excellencies in the House, and the young people, good afternoon once again. I'm so delighted to be here, especially by being invited to speak at this forum, which is showing us that it's very visionary and looking forward, especially including the young people in decision making. This platform, I believe it should be permanent as a resolution so that we can engage the young people and put them at the forefront at the discussions that we are making, especially concerning their lives. Most of the young people always say that we always involve them in just statistics. They say you talk about the numbers, but where are we in the decision making? Where are we on the table taking decisions that concern their lives? I think this is very wonderful if we carry it forward. It helps to engage them, listening to them, involving them, and empowering them, like we kept on saying. And this creates a lot of confidence, trust, and creates intergenerational dialogue, and also helps to create the ecosystem that they need to ensure that whatever they're doing, we support them. I just want to say we kept on talking about empowerment, and we say that in all our policies. Just to mention that it should be structural, attitudinal, cultural, and these processes give youth the ability and capabilities to urgently spearhead or effect changes that improves the livelihood of their own lives, but also in the communities. Just to share a few initiatives that you have in our country, Rwanda, I had many people talking about that. I don't have time to answer the ambassador, the impact of empowering women in terms of also in relation to gender-based violence. I don't think one can be at the expense of the other. So because gender violence is going up, so we don't have to empower women. I think it helps even to reduce on that gender violence, especially when you involve and engage women and youth as well. In our country, not only Rwanda, but even the continent, we have talked about numbers, over 50% are young people. And you cannot do anything without putting them at the forefront because they constitute the population today and tomorrow. And in terms of the programs that you have, there are many that we have in our countries, but also at the continental level. One of the programs that I could talk about that creates opportunities for young people is a program that we have started with the private sector, the civil society, but also the UN, UNDP. Is a program that creates an ecosystem for supporting young people, right from skills acquisition to access to finance, and also a network of mentorship that helps them to access different opportunities. This program is called Youth Connect. And it has gone from Rwanda, now it is being implemented in about 12 countries. And what do we talk about in Youth Connect? It's just connecting the disconnected dots, because there are many opportunities for young people elsewhere, but the young people are in another corner and opportunities in another corner. This linkage that helps to connect the opportunities that disconnected is what we call as Youth Connect. Access to information, mostly, access to markets, access to the skills, access to mentorship, and access to also resources that they need. When you talk about empowering young people, especially in entrepreneurship that we've been talking about, first of all, we need education. The education also could be tailored to the needs of the youth, especially the vocational training, the TVET, that are hands-on skills that helps them to achieve, or out of school immediately you have something to do right there. And also beyond the TVET, we need also to help them provide a platform or ecosystem that also helps them to access in the entrepreneurship spirit, the ability to change challenges into opportunities, or challenges that everyone is complaining about. They make it an opportunity for anyone else to get a job. I came in at 4 a.m. this morning, and while later I was supposed to be coming in last evening at 3 p.m., but I was delayed because my president was meeting with Mr. Strive Masiwa, the CEO of Econet, was meeting the young people in the country, because we have a platform called Youth Connect, especially Meet the President forums, and was celebrating young people that got about 160,000 US dollars from Jack Ma platform, the Jack Ma's platform, which is Alibaba, that was set for all African countries to participate in netrepreneurs, almost similar to what our colleagues are doing. And these young people, out of 10,000 applications, were on about 2 young ladies from Rwanda. Why it was so important? This young lady turned challenges into opportunities. One of the organizations that they have, they were students, and when they came out, they saw in the communities there were no shoes. And what they did, they looked for, the wasted tires, our cars when they are worn out, they are thrown all over the streets. They picked all these tires, worn out, and recycled them, and they became the raw materials for the shoes. Those young ladies are employing 65 people. Then the other one also, you can clap. It's very possible. I just want to keep on answering the lady who said, is it possible? Can we do it? Yes, we can do it. And we have to first have political will and the will, and also the belief that we can be done. The other second lady that I want to conclude with is the young lady who has started mechanical engineering. Instead of coming and looking for jobs elsewhere, she came and heard on TV and radio, she heard that some communities in Rwanda didn't have access to water. And she started going around looking, mobilizing colleagues who had a technical skill. And also they identified the partners on board. They started drilling water, purifying water, and distributing in the communities. Now they have gone to about six districts in Rwanda, but they're looking at scaling up beyond Rwanda and elsewhere in Africa. And they have also employed 65. I don't know the numbers, how they match. Each one was employing 65 employees, but they are capable of growing. So imagine young people in the house, each one of you creating jobs for 65. Should we have unemployment in Africa? Do you think it's possible? So if it is possible, I think it is us policymakers, as we sit together with young people, we can craft policies that are in favor of what they think. And we don't think for them, but we involve them on the table. And we always talk about the demographic dividend. It's a dividend that you have to make profits, but you make profits after investing. So if it is a decision, it's a deliberate effort. If we don't want to have the disaster, we could have dividend. But all this takes investment. I want to thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Let's now have Anne Wanjuhi Njoroge, founder and president of Nelig Group. Again, I insist, let's please restrict our time to 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. My name is Wanjuhi Njoroge. I wear many hats. I am a daughter of a small village at the foot of Mount Kenya. I am a climate change activist and ran one of the biggest campaigns last year dubbed Save Our Forest KE that saw a ban on forest harvesting. And importantly, I'm an entrepreneur and I do business with government, taking advantage of the affirmative action reserved for women, youth, and persons living with disability. And I have to confess that I have made a bit of money. And it was until this year that I started experiencing difficulties in business. Difficulties that saw me go through the entire spectrum of emotions. I got angry, including getting angry at the government because I was blaming them for my problems. But then I called myself to a small meeting and I asked myself, Wanjuhi, you're an educated woman. You have a degree from one of the prestigious universities of Kenya, called the University of Nairobi. So what is the problem? And I realized that I was a reseller. So I was buying from somebody and then selling to government. And many of us are doing the same. I have had the privilege of sitting on a board, on a county board, not too long ago, that was charged with the responsibility of distributing money. It's called the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, again, targeting women and youth and persons living with disability. And it's amazing what women do with the 10,000 or 100 US dollars that they are given. So when you ask yourself, growing up, we all know that women are entrepreneurs. They've always been entrepreneurs. And so you ask yourself, what are we not doing right? And then I went back to myself and I realized, you're not the only reseller. We are so many resellers in Kenya, in Africa, and I believe in elsewhere other than the developed countries. And which brings me to the conversation of the day, of this panel, which is decent jobs. The world is facing very complex challenges, and making it even more complex is what the first speaker mentioned, which is the fourth industrial revolution. Those of us who are from Kenya will tell you that the banking industry has seen quite a number of people lose their jobs because of automation. When you think about the fourth industrial revolution, many will call it the digital revolution, but I call it, for me, I see it as a combination of the three previous revolutions and then putting the human beings at the middle of it. It is not supposed to come and replace the human being. It is supposed to come and enhance the human being. But for us as Africa and Pacific countries or Caribbean countries, for us to be able to do this, we have to have the expertise to be able to trade in them. Because we've seen countries like Japan, which are really advanced. We've seen robots replacing human beings. And you know, so we are not any unique. We are going to be replaced, which will make our problems even worse. The other one is climate change. I went home in the last week of August and I saw us using the usual sprinkler. And I had a conversation with my parents and I told them, you know, it is time we change this sprinkler because water is reducing at an alarming rate. Those of us who are into climate change will tell you that it is reducing at double the rate of population growth, which is alarming. And about 50 countries will be out of water by 2050. I'm not here to scare people, but I'm here to say that we cannot continue doing business as usual. The question we must ask ourselves is, how do we, as Africa, as Caribbean countries and the Pacific, come together and look at where we are, where we want to go, and where the globe is going? Because we are not working in isolation. Number two, the previous panel talked about capacity building. I think we've been using this phrase for quite a long time. But what are we capacity building? What is it that is in this capacity building? And I believe that the time, and allow me to talk about Kenya, where I'm more familiar with. We have something we call the TVETs, which I look at as a huge opportunity for transforming the youth of this country and many other countries that can take advantage of this. When I think about the fourth industrial revolution, I challenge myself with the electric cars. And I ask myself, these cars are coming, but do I have the skills or do we have the mechanics that are going to repair these cars? I see it as a huge opportunity. And when I look at the Sustainable Development Goals, I don't think we'll achieve them by 2030, which is fine, but I look at them as a roadmap to help us get ahead and move ahead. And if we were to take advantage of them as a people, I believe we would get far. The other thing that we must look at is the quality of education. I am an employer, and I at times get people from universities and I wonder, oh my God, this one really went through a university. I feel that universities cannot continue to produce something that nobody is consuming. We need to get to a point where universities and institutions of higher learning are held accountable for the products that they are producing. Only then shall we align what the market needs versus what is being produced from universities. As I conclude, I also want to talk about what are we holding in our hands as a people. I see the CFTA when we talk about Africa. And as a young person, I'm asking, how can I innovate around the CFTA? I see the ACP and I see a huge market opportunity. I said I'm a daughter of a village, and there was a reason as to why I said I'm a daughter of a village. We produce carrots, we produce potatoes, we produce maize and beans. How can our maize and beans and potatoes get to the Caribbean? This is a huge opportunity, and I feel that this should be the conversation that we should be talking about going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And last but not least, Tanya Habimania, CEO, Non-Zero Africa, based in Joburg.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me here. I am honored and quite frankly a little bit nervous to be sharing a stage with such exceptional people, champions who have been advancing the cause for youth employability. So my name is Tanya Habimana. I'm a woman, I'm a youth, and I'm an entrepreneur. I'm on my second venture on the African continent, and I sit on the board of 2 startups, one tech and one fashion. Why I'm telling you all of this is I just want to give you a bit of introduction as to who I am and some of the work that we're doing. So most of the work that I've been involved in the last year is basically us partnering with government, institutions, academia, and large corporates to grow SMEs on the continent. Why SMEs? We've touched upon it before. SMEs are the greatest contributor of employment, and they single-handedly hold the potential to solve the youth unemployment problem that we have. Our thinking is if we can empower 10,000 SMEs, and as a result of which they can hire 3 young people, we will have created 30,000 jobs. So in that, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about a project that we've done. This one actually doesn't directly involve SMEs, but it kind of explains the thinking and the way in which we operate. It's a public-private partnership that started in South Africa. It's called the YES Initiative, the Youth Employment Service. What it does is that governments have basically incentivized corporates to fund, and that means pay for the salaries of young people for a year. Now, one of the problems with initiatives such as this is that a lot of the corporates didn't have the capacity to take in these young people. So instead, what we decided to do is to look at how can we use these young people whose salaries have been funded against obviously tax incentives and place them within SMEs or within projects. One of our projects has completed its pilot just 2 weeks ago. It's called Project Nomzamo. And what we did was we took 55 young people and trained them to become community health workers. This is in line with what you've just said. We looked at what were the needs in our communities and in our societies and tried to match it with the actual training that we were going to give. And one of the problems when it comes to healthcare is the burden of disease that we find in rural areas. Because people are so isolated, they can't actually reach hospitals or clinics. So we train these community healthcare workers to be able to go to the rural areas and provide primary healthcare before the diseases get out of hand. The results of which, within just 6 months, is that these 55 community healthcare workers were able to touch 6,600 households. That's 6,600 households that have mum, dads, children, and sometimes grandparents, obviously creating a considerable impact on health. We hope to be able to do more projects such as this and to be able to impact society. Something else that I'm personally involved in, I spend quite a bit of time coaching and being a big sister to young business people. The reason why I do that is that there's a critical need for those who, and I think this is kind of an appeal, those who have succeeded, whether working for an organization or even in your personal capacity, to invest in youth. And when I say investing, very often we think cash, but cash investment is actually the cheapest form of investment that we can do. The first type of investment that we can do is providing access to networks. An introduction, I will wind up. An introduction can go a long way. The second one is providing knowledge capital. We know a lot of things. We've been exposed to the world. Providing this to young people will give them the necessary tools and insights to be able to apply them to SMEs or to other businesses and to grow. And lastly, as I said, is obviously investing in cash, which my compatriots are already doing. That is a plea that I want to give to you. I hope to have sparked some interest, and I look forward to discussing this further. Thank you.